Early 2003, a team of German archaeologists working in Iraq, they discovered what they believed to be the long-lost tomb of the mythical king Gilgamesh.
Whispers of a discovery buried beneath the sands of Iraq have terrified even the bravest archaeologists. Radar scans revealed structures matching the epic descriptions of Gilgamesh's final resting place. Yet, no one dares break the seal. Why? Because what lies inside is rumored to defy history, science, and even human understanding. Could this be the tomb of a king who was said to be part man, part god? Or is it something even more dangerous? Tonight, we'll uncover why this mystery has left experts pale with fear. The tomb beneath Uruk. In the early 2000s, a discovery shook the archaeological world. Though most of the details never made it past whispers, scattered reports, and hushed discussions among researchers. In 2003, a German-led team operating near the ruins of ancient Uruk conducted a series of scans that would ignite one of the most enduring mysteries of modern archaeology. Led by Dr. Jörg Fassbinder, the group deployed ground-penetrating radar and magnetometers, hoping to uncover remnants of Sumerian civilization buried beneath the desert sands. What they found was nothing short of extraordinary. The instruments revealed shapes, lines, and voids beneath the surface that suggested more than simple geology. They suggested architecture, corridors, chambers, and even the traces of canal-like structures. To the astonishment of the team, these features bore a striking resemblance to passages described in Mesopotamian texts, a vast complex linked to the final resting place of Gilgamesh, the legendary king of Uruk. The scans suggested something massive, roughly the size of a football field, and the layout echoed the descriptions of structures surrounding Gilgamesh's burial. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest surviving piece of literature known to mankind, describes his life, his quest for immortality, and ultimately his burial beneath the river. For centuries, historians assumed this phrasing was poetic, not literal, but the radar results suggested otherwise. The Sumerians wrote that Gilgamesh was interred beneath or near the Euphrates River itself, his tomb hidden by water and sediment. Over thousands of years, the Euphrates has shifted its course multiple times, cutting new channels and abandoning old ones. The site in question near modern-day Warqa, southern Iraq, lay along one of these ancient channels. In other words, it matched the ancient record in a way that was impossible to ignore. For the first time, there's real evidence that the king who has long been thought of more as legend than man might actually have had a tomb. If this continued to prove true, it would be one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history, such as finding the resting place of King Tut or the unearthing of Troy. It would prove that the man described as two-thirds god and one-third human was not merely a subject of myth, but was, indeed, a historical ruler somewhere in the real world, and left behind a burial place not unworthy of his epic legacy. But, notwithstanding this largeness of the discovery, there was no excavation that followed. The German team simply handed their data to local Iraqi authorities, and that was how it all seemed to have disappeared. The official justification for this was timing. 2003, the year when Iraq went to war, and all in the region made it impossible to do more excavation work. From then onward, the country fell to chaos, and all foreign teams hustled out for their safety. But to those versed in the story, that was only part of the truth. It was reason enough to give anybody a raised eyebrow. No official report, no peer-reviewed paper, no images released. How could one of the most promising discoveries in modern history simply be abandoned? Why was there no academic record beyond interviews with Fassbinder himself? To skeptics, the absence of transparency suggested something else at work: bureaucracy, secrecy, or even fear. In archaeology, discoveries are normally documented, archived, and studied, even if excavation cannot begin immediately. In this case, all that remained were rumors, and the initial statements of the team leader. As months turned into years, speculation flourished. Some suggested that Iraqi officials, overwhelmed by the invasion and looting of cultural sites across the country, deliberately sealed away the information to prevent further losses. Others believed that the find was simply too controversial, too destabilizing to the accepted historical record, to risk opening to the public. If a legendary king's tomb truly lay beneath Uruk, then what else from the ancient Sumerian texts might also prove true? But whispers soon spread that fear wasn't the only reason the site was abandoned. The curse of Gilgamesh. For as long as humans have buried their dead, they have also guarded them with stone, with secrecy, and sometimes with fear. In Mesopotamia, this fear took on a very specific form. Unlike the Egyptian pharaohs, who were often said to rest under explicit curses etched into their tomb walls, the Sumerians and Babylonians relied on protective incantations and rituals. These spells, recorded on clay tablets, invoked the gods to punish anyone who dared to disturb the eternal rest of a king. The punishment was not meant to be quick or merciful. According to these texts, intruders might face disease, madness, or divine wrath that would ripple far beyond a single person. For ordinary graves, these protections may have been modest, but for a king like Gilgamesh, half divine, half human, the barriers could have been far more severe. It was within this cultural framework,
Lost tomb of the mythical king Gilgamesh, the protagonist of the oldest story human beings ever wrote,
that whispers of a curse surrounding the Uruk discovery began to take shape. Soon after the German team left, stories began to circulate among locals. Villagers and herders claimed that the desert surrounding the suspected tomb carried a strange energy. Some said their animals refused to cross certain areas. Sheep scattered, dogs howled at night, and birds avoided flying over the ground. These weren't isolated reports, but recurring patterns that built up over years of retelling. To those living nearby, it was a clear sign. Something beneath the sand was not meant to be disturbed. Then came the more unsettling stories, accounts of people falling mysteriously ill after approaching the area. One tale, shared secondhand among researchers, described a small group of workers who set up equipment near the site. Within days, they reported severe nausea, high fevers, and violent dizziness. One man, according to the rumor, died within 2 weeks. Whether these symptoms came from environmental causes, contaminated water, heat stroke, or infection was never clarified. But to the locals, the explanation was obvious. They had trespassed on forbidden ground. The idea of a curse gained traction when claims of inscriptions began to emerge. Some sources, never officially verified, described cuneiform markings found on walls or artifacts linked to the site. These writings allegedly warned of eternal guardians and a vessel not to be broken until the stars align once more. Such phrasing sounds dramatic, even mythical, but it mirrors language found in other Mesopotamian funerary texts. Priests and scribes often used celestial metaphors to speak of the balance between gods, mortals, and the afterlife. Even fragments of such admonitions from Gilgamesh's tomb would suffice to sustain within man both dread and wonder. Online legends proliferated in an enhanced manner, while the thought of a curse around Gilgamesh's tomb wholly captured the world's imagination. Articles and videos now began making comparisons with the tomb of Tutankhamun in Egypt, where some considered the so-called curse of the pharaoh to have caused sudden deaths among many, including Lord Carnarvon, who entered that chamber. According to scientists later, the sudden deaths were possibly due to mold spores and bacteria. But the power of legend was not halted. The same way, Gilgamesh's curse was not fed with evidence or anything like that, but unexplained happenings, strange folklore, and the natural tendency of humankind to fear the unseen. Even the most seasoned researchers had to admit the power of such tales. Archaeologists may not be honest enough to admit to believing in curses, but they know how serious local folklores can become. Ignoring them could lead to loss of cooperation, trust, or maybe even safety. Sites being avoided by the locals send a message that has a significant weight beyond superstition. It becomes a practical reason to pause, and sometimes to stop altogether. And so, the tomb of Gilgamesh remained untouched, not because anyone could prove a curse was real, but because too many believed it might be. Yet, even as this atmosphere of fear deepened, another explanation was about to surface, one that had nothing to do with spirits or incantations, but everything to do with modern conflict. And yet, the fear of curses is only part of the story. The politics of war added another chilling layer. War, secrecy, and lost access. The timing could not have been more uncanny. In early 2003, just as whispers of the Uruk scans reached the wider archaeological community, the Iraq War erupted. The German-led team that had uncovered the subterranean shapes beneath Uruk's sands had little choice but to suspend operations. Foreign nationals fled the country for their safety, research was halted, and permits were revoked. What might have been the beginning of a historic excavation became instead the start of one of history's most enduring mysteries. The scans were real, the data existed, but the chance to confirm them evaporated overnight. As the war raged, the site faded from official records, but not from memory. The vacuum of information quickly became fertile ground for speculation. U.S. military forces soon occupied southern Iraq, and reports circulated that checkpoints were placed near areas of archaeological significance. For many, this was not coincidence. Rumors spread that American forces had not only secured the Uruk site, but had taken control of whatever was hidden beneath it. Whispers of sealed trucks, guarded convoys, and nighttime movements of artifacts ignited suspicion. Some claimed the tomb had been looted under military watch, its contents spirited away before archaeologists could ever return. Theories flourished online, especially in the mid-2000s, when conspiracy forums began amplifying fragmented accounts. Some argued the U.S. invasion had less to do with weapons of mass destruction and more to do with the pursuit of ancient knowledge or technology. Gilgamesh's name, once confined to epic poetry and dusty classrooms, became a lightning rod for theories involving hidden power, immortality, and lost civilizations. Even the mainstream media gave brief attention. Outlets like BBC and Al Jazeera reported on the discovery in passing, but the coverage soon disappeared. For those already suspicious, this silence seemed deliberate. Fueling these suspicions further was a very real, very tragic event: the looting of Iraq's National Museum in Baghdad.
April 2003, looters rampaged in the storerooms and galleries of Iraq's National Museum.
In the chaos of the invasion, thousands of priceless Mesopotamian artifacts vanished. Statues, tablets, and jewelry from the cradle of civilization itself. While some of these items were later recovered, many remain missing, swallowed by the black market. Among them was one of the most important relics connected to Gilgamesh, the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet, a 3,500-year-old cuneiform piece containing passages from the epic. The tablet re-emerged years later in the hands of private collectors, eventually ending up in the U.S., before being seized by federal authorities and returned to Iraq in 2021. The journey testified that there had been looting, in fact, and all the stronger were the demands of the stolen treasures from Uruk. Many could clearly see a pattern. Tomb, possibly of the most famous king in Mesopotamian history, had been found. A war broke out, and priceless artifacts disappeared from sight. So, how can there be any wonder that suspicion thrived? To outsiders, history was not merely lost, it was shrouded in mystery. Below the whirlpool of these speculations, however, lay one fact that could never be denied. Archaeologists returned to the site. It may be due to military intervention, looting, or fear of exposure. The fact that no new expeditions were ever launched in Uruk is to confirm or deny the original findings. It was deafening silence. The war robbed Iraq of stability and closed the door on what might have been one of archaeology's greatest discoveries. Till today, It stands unexplored, guarded not only by political borders, but also by the shadows of suspicion on site. But beyond military intrigue, archaeologists themselves had practical and unsettling reasons for staying away. Hesitation of the experts. Even without rumors of curses or whispers of military intervention, the prospect of excavating Gilgamesh's alleged tomb is daunting. Archaeology, despite its adventurous image, is not simply a matter of digging until treasure is found. It requires stability, security, funding, and international cooperation, all of which are scarce in southern Iraq. The site near ancient Uruk lies in a region racked by political instability for decades. Armed conflict, tribal tensions, and fragile infrastructure have made even routine archaeological projects nearly impossible to sustain. For foreign researchers, moving teams, equipment, and specialists into the area demands armed escorts, clearance from multiple authorities, and extensive planning for emergencies. Few universities or institutions are willing to accept such risks, no matter how tantalizing the potential reward. Environmental challenges also weigh heavily. Southern Iraq is notorious for its blistering heat, violent dust storms, and seasonal floods. Electronic instruments such as ground-penetrating radar and magnetometers can malfunction under these conditions, making reliable data collection difficult. Even if excavation began, shifting sands and unstable ground could threaten not only delicate artifacts, but the safety of the archaeologists themselves. What looks on paper like an adventure into history could quickly turn into a logistical nightmare. Beyond the physical dangers, there is the problem of uncertainty. The German team's scans in 2003 suggested geometric structures consistent with canals, corridors, and chambers, but no excavation was ever performed. Remote sensing is powerful, but limited. Anomalies underground can look like walls, but sometimes turn out to be natural rock formations. To gamble the reputation of an institution and the resources of sponsors on ambiguous scans is a risk few are willing to take. Archaeologists, trained to value verifiable evidence, are wary of pursuing leads that could turn out to be little more than wishful thinking. The academic world has seen many false starts, where promising discoveries became embarrassing misinterpretations. A high-profile failure at Uruk would not only damage reputations, but also strain diplomatic ties in a region already sensitive to foreign involvement. And then comes perhaps the greatest hesitation of all: preservation. Opening a sealed chamber after thousands of years is not as simple as prying open a door. The moment air, moisture, or light enters, ancient materials can disintegrate. Papyrus scrolls, wooden coffins, and even skeletal remains can crumble to dust within hours. Climate-controlled chambers, specialized conservation teams, and months of preparation are needed before a site of this magnitude could safely be opened. To rush into Gilgamesh's tomb, if it truly exists, could mean destroying the very evidence that would prove its authenticity. For many archaeologists, the fear is not of curses or conspiracies, but of irreparable loss. Better to wait than to destroy forever what may be the greatest find of all time.
On the banks of Iraq's Mosul Reservoir, receding water has revealed previously lost ancient tombs.
These layers of hesitation explain why the site has remained untouched for 2 decades. The risks are immense, the uncertainties overwhelming, and the consequences of error devastating. And yet, despite these very real concerns, some claim the story does not end there. Because according to whispers in the archaeological community, a secret team already pushed past these hesitations. They say the chamber was entered, if only briefly, and what they found inside was enough to terrify even hardened researchers. Yet some say a secret team already entered the chamber, and what they found terrified them. The Forbidden Chamber. Among the most chilling claims surrounding the Uruk discovery are the whispered testimonies of those who say the tomb was not just detected beneath the sands, but briefly entered. According to these alleged insiders, sometime in the mid-2000s, a small group of contractors and local workers were tasked with probing deeper into the site. What they reported has never appeared in any official record. Yet the stories continue to circulate in hushed tones across academic backchannels and conspiracy forums alike. The accounts describe a descent into a sealed chamber, where the team discovered a massive stone sarcophagus resting at the center. The walls around it, they claimed, were carved with cuneiform inscriptions, not simple records of burial, but ominous invocations. The texts spoke of eternal guardians, of powers that would not forgive trespass, and of a vessel never meant to be disturbed until the stars themselves returned to their rightful positions. For some, the word vessel referred to the sarcophagus itself. For others, it hinted at something stranger, something more than a body laid to rest. Whatever its meaning, the message was clear. This place was sealed for a reason. But the strangeness did not stop at inscriptions. Reports circulated of inexplicable phenomena inside the chamber. One account claimed that the sarcophagus emitted a low, constant vibration, a hum that could be felt through the stone floor. Another described how electrical equipment malfunctioned almost immediately upon entering. Batteries drained without explanation, instruments refused to calibrate, and compasses spun erratically, as though caught in a magnetic storm. Some said that a strong field of energy emanated from the walls themselves, invisible yet undeniable. To the scientifically minded, these details suggested anomalies that deserved investigation. To those inclined to fear, they suggested something otherworldly. Perhaps the most extraordinary claim came from an alleged translator who worked briefly with photographs of the inscriptions. According to his testimony, the writing described Gilgamesh not merely as a king, but as a giant preserved by divine breath. The texts spoke of a heart that does not decay, and a body suspended in a state between life and death. In other words, if the accounts are true, the tomb may not hold a skeleton turned to dust, but something unnervingly intact. It is this possibility that electrifies some and terrifies others. Imagine, for a moment, the implications. The physical remains of a man described in the world's oldest literature, preserved in a condition defying time. Some suggest advanced embalming techniques lost to history. Others whisper of influences not entirely human. Whatever the case, such a discovery would rewrite not only Mesopotamian history, but the very boundaries of what we believe possible. The alleged aftermath of the chamber's breach only adds to the unease. Workers reportedly fell ill soon after the entry, suffering from fever, nausea, and unexplained weakness.
What are we walking into right now?
This is the wall that would separate the holy from the most holy.
At least one man, the stories claim, died within weeks. Two of the individuals involved supposedly abandoned archaeology altogether, citing the experience as spiritually or psychologically unbearable. No documents, no photographs, and no official statements have ever confirmed these events. But the consistency of the rumors, shared quietly across years, has given them a chilling weight. For mainstream historians, such tales are dismissed as exaggerations or fabrications. Without evidence, they remain in the realm of speculation. Yet even as scholars caution against jumping to conclusions, the sheer persistence of these accounts cannot be ignored. They have become part of the mythology surrounding Gilgamesh's tomb, inseparable from the facts that first sparked interest. If true, this would upend history, but it also unleashed a firestorm of controversy. The silence and the controversy. For all the extraordinary claims surrounding the Uruk discovery, one fact stands out above all else. Nothing official has ever been released. No peer-reviewed papers, no academic photographs, no detailed surveys published in scientific journals. Normally, a find of this magnitude would be documented exhaustively, regardless of whether the excavation could continue. Yet here, the record is almost blank. The German team that first conducted the scans has remained largely silent, with only scattered interviews from their leader. Iraqi authorities, meanwhile, have offered no follow-up. The absence of evidence has created its own narrative, one of deliberate suppression. Why else would such a potentially world-shattering find vanish into obscurity? This silence has split opinion into warring camps. On one side are the scholars and independent researchers who argue that archaeology owes transparency to the world. They insist that even preliminary scans should have been made public, if only to allow peer scrutiny. To them, withholding information about a possible royal tomb is irresponsible, even unethical. On the other side stand skeptics, who argue that extraordinary claims without evidence do not deserve serious consideration. For them, the silence proves nothing except that the discovery was overblown from the start. And then there are religious leaders, both local and abroad, who warn that disturbing the resting places of ancient kings invites consequences beyond academic debate. Some clerics in Iraq have gone so far as to declare that some doors are not meant to be opened, invoking spiritual law as a barrier stronger than any government regulation. These clashing voices have created a storm of speculation that shows no sign of calming. Into the vacuum of official information, countless alternative narratives have rushed. Online forums and video channels claim to have leaked photographs of the chamber, grainy stills showing shadowy corridors, inscriptions, and even what some allege is the outline of a sarcophagus. None of these images have been authenticated, yet they circulate widely, fueling both belief and doubt. Other accounts speak of archaeologists forced to sign non-disclosure agreements, pressured into silence by either governments or private interests. Such whispers are impossible to verify, but they thrive precisely because the silence at the top leaves space for them to grow. The excitement has begun to permeate scholarly discourse. Some younger scholars privately admit to their belief in the reality of the places. However, to go on record would require an utter disregard for their professional prospects. Older historians appear irritable at the thought that any assumptions about a myth or a conspiracy might cloud the legitimate study of Mesopotamian culture, creating an atmosphere, therefore, of standoffishness whereby nobody dares go forward, but nobody can walk away from the case. Equally, the air of enigma has grown thicker around it. Every year that passes without proper answers contributes another layer of the enigma. The tomb of Gilgamesh has escaped the status of mere academic footnote, acquiring a character of more cultural riddle, one debated in documentaries, podcasts, and wee-hour discussions. For those who believe, such silence is proof of something extraordinary locked away. For those who do not, it is proof of nothing at all. Certainly noticeable is the impact that the tale has had. Whether or not the tomb is there, it has changed how people perceive archaeology, secrecy, and the graying lines between myth and history. It reminds the world that information may be about what is withheld as much as what is revealed. And still, the biggest question lingers. What happens next if the tomb ever is opened? The future buried in sand. For nearly 2 decades, the possible tomb of Gilgamesh has remained buried under the shifting sands of southern Iraq. The reasons are not mysterious when viewed through the lens of politics and culture. Iraq's long years of instability have left entire regions unsafe for international archaeological missions. Even when relative calm has returned, cultural sensitivities remain. To many Iraqis, ancient tombs are not simply relics for scientific study, they are sacred ground, tied to the deep spiritual fabric of the region. Any attempt to disturb such a site risks sparking anger, protests, or worse. Archaeology requires not only tools and funding, but also trust. Without the support of local communities and national leaders, no excavation is possible. But behind the curtain of politics lies another, quieter obstacle. Information that may already exist, but has never been released.
Extraterrestrials had something to do with our development.
Insiders whisper that the data collected during the original Uruk surveys, radar images, magnetic readings, and preliminary notes are locked away in European archives. Some suggest they were deliberately classified to prevent further inquiry. Others believe the silence stems from fear. Fear of ridicule if the findings turn out to be inconclusive, or fear of upheaval if they turn out to be real. What little has been confirmed is that no scans, no files, and no photographs have been made available to the public. Somewhere, perhaps in a research facility or private archive, lies the only hard evidence of what might rest beneath the sands. And so, the tomb remains untouched, not because it cannot be reached, but because no one dares to take the next step. The stakes are staggering. If the chamber beneath Uruk truly holds the body of Gilgamesh, the implications would ripple across history, religion, and science. A real tomb would prove that the man described in the Epic of Gilgamesh was not just legend, but historical fact. His body, if preserved as rumors suggest, could contain secrets of ancient embalming or biology that modern science cannot yet explain. For some, it could even challenge our understanding of humanity itself. But on the other hand, disturbing the tomb might unleash consequences no one can predict. Whether those consequences are spiritual, cultural, or political, they loom large. Imagine the uproar if such a discovery contradicted established historical narratives. Consider the majority fury if scared ground were ever disturbed and found empty, or worse, desecrated. And, likewise, conclude with the blood-chilling possibility that the engraving warnings in cuneiform were more than superstition, but a message that had to be left for the future. Gilgamesh was not meant to be disturbed. This is why the tomb of Gilgamesh, if it exists, remains sealed. Archaeologists hesitate, governments stall, and communities warn against intrusion. And yes, in that hesitation might lie wisdom. Some mysteries are defined not by their answers, but by their silence. Gilgamesh's tomb remains uncertain. It could go untouched for another generation, its whys swallowed by the sand and myth. It might one day come to light, however, and force the world to consider truths it is not yet prepared to digest. In any case, the story has achieved already something remarkable. It has blurred the line between legend and history to such an extent that it will be impossible to say where one ends and the other begins. The future of Gilgamesh's tomb is uncertain. It may remain untouched for another generation, its secrets swallowed by sand and myth, or it may one day be revealed, forcing the world to confront truths it is not yet ready to face. Either way, the story has already achieved something extraordinary. It has blurred the line between legend and history so completely that we cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. Even now, researchers quietly debate whether humanity is prepared for what might be found. Some argue the discovery would unite science and mythology, proving once and for all that ancient texts contain hidden truths. Others fear it would fracture beliefs, ignite new conflicts, and spark a scramble for control over whatever secrets lie within the chamber. Which leaves us with a haunting question. Was Gilgamesh buried to be remembered, or buried to be sealed away forever? The possible tomb of Gilgamesh remains one of archaeology's greatest unsolved mysteries. A king, a myth, and maybe something far more. Should it be opened, or should it remain sealed beneath the earth? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch the next video shown on your screen for more mysteries from the ancient world.